unless you're in a cult, the truth is important to you. So let's look over some of the truths and security issues we as a nation face. North Korea is a security threat. They tortured Otto pretty much to death, sent him back home where he died 6 days later, and he was in a comatose state since he had been sent over. Yet Trump brags about it, and his parents took issue with that, saying he tortured our son to death. It's not something to brag about. And much like with the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre, the parents were threatened. Several of the Sandy Hook parents have taken their own lives, have had to move half a dozen times. They get death threats every day, all because their 5-year-old children were gunned down. And they, say the truth. If the truth doesn't add up to what these monsters want, they will lie, and they will send crazy people after, these victims. And take, for instance, when he declared victory over ISIS, and the guy attacked the next day. Fox would not report on an ISIS attack because Donald Trump wants to believe it's over with. He wants a victory lap, so it doesn't matter how many soldiers get killed. They will not even cover it. And he even denounced the general, and the general resigned because, he said about it. He's a national security advisor. When they get called to Congress, they speak the truth. If they speak the truth, Donald takes issue with it and sends them off, gets somebody else to fire them for him. And Cohen's in jail for doing his bidding, but again, would not commit crimes for him. And you can find much of testimony in the Mueller report. And again, these are good men versus a non-criminal, a non-monster, a non-adulterer. I think that's why Melania didn't want to move to the White House. She had for-profit nudes online. She didn't want this. I think, well, let's stick to fact, rather. We know without question that the Russians interfered with our election. I know personally they were at it for a very long time, and we know they wanted to elect Donald Trump. The question is why? We know about the Trump Tower Moscow thanks to the Mueller report and Cohen finally coming clean. Donald calls him a rat. He practices mobster tactics all the time. It's trash. He acts like Julian Assange. He's now claiming that the U.S. is spying on him when really he is lying and leaking confidential information. That's why Julian Assange is going to jail for stealing military secrets and giving it to other nations. Like, they try to do this. I don't know. It's a technique they use, but it's quite obvious. And like Donald Trump admitted to calling things fake news, not because they were factually incorrect, but because he didn't like them. Like the sources are the dictionary, the the actual death count, the actual people crossing the border, like the actual numbers versus whatever he wants, to say. And it's sick, and it only serves hate. And much like with his anti-American conspiracy theories he's spreading right now, much like he did at Helsinki, where he denounced the United States intelligence, CIA, FBI, threw them all in the bus, as well as our allies, and bowed to Putin, bowed to Eastern propaganda. The same deep state, fake news, BS, third world dictators put out there. It's like with North Korea, they want their people to believe, America's doing this to you. You have to eat bark because of them. No, they just feed you a lie, and then somebody on the top, exploits the labor. And that's largely what's wrong with America right now. Like he talks about making America great. In the 1950s, it was twice as high for, not living paycheck to paycheck, but for the people making over $2 million a year. And that's how every other industrialized nation all throughout Europe has universal health care and things of that nature. But they do a lot of brainwashing here. That's like every other nation on earth, every independent scientific study finds in global warming, the only people that will say differently are literally receiving money from the big oil company. Just like everybody that used to talk about secondhand smoke wasn't real was receiving money from big tobacco. And if you just look at the red and blue states, you see the West Coast can put things on the ballot. They're not taxing groceries. They're not incarcerating like we do. Like it is a much more free and democratic state, and they like it's direct democracy. They can vote on things on the ballot by getting enough registered voters to sign a petition. It's it's obvious, but there's a lot of propaganda, and some people, if you live in the Fox bubble, never hear these truths. Most states are not taxing your groceries. Alabama is. Um, but if we're continuing the threats, of course, Russia has always been our greatest adversary, and unlike the terrorists, they have multiple venues. They their spies can steal military intelligence that the Russians can build counterparts to. Like, they are more competitive than the terrorists. They are a threat, and they have set up satellite nations in Eastern Europe before. They claim we do it in Mexico, but really it was much like the Monroe Doctrine, trying to cancel out the communism doctrine. But basically, they overthrow governments and install puppet regimes like in the Ukraine with military force, sure, but it's largely intelligence. They find people already living in the country that can be molded or coerced or just gaslit into doing Russia's bidding. And again, we have to ask ourselves, why did they choose Trump? Is it because of his mental defects? Is it because of his moral defects? Because of his business dealings? Or is it straight up collusion? As they were offering it, he was asking for it, lined up perfectly, but you can't charge a sitting president like they've been saying. So it's supposed to go to Congress, but he keeps pouring the Kool-Aid, and no other president has done this. Like, it is insane. And we can't impeach prior presidents. Like, it doesn't even make sense, but it's just propaganda that, can sound good if you already have a predisposition to hate whoever he's talking about. That's what he capitalizes on. He only knows how to capitalize on hate. He has no God. He has no facts. He's just, a bunch of bad. And that's really all he's ever done. He was bragging about owning a pageant because he could walk in on the teens undressing, and that range was 14 to 18. And now thousands of children have been abused in migrant care. Their parents separated, can't even find them. And they want to say they deserved it or whatever. Like, if parents get caught shoplifting, can the police take your kid to the back of the cruise and do God knows what? No. So the same thing applies. Just because he's a refugee doesn't mean their kid has to go through that. Like, that is deplorable, and it should make people mad. But because the victim didn't look exactly like you, it's kind of harder for some people to empathize. And I just feel like if we get back to facts, back to God, we can overcome Trump. But people have to stop drinking the Kool-Aid. Like, he's an obvious liar. He has a clinical diagnosis, actually corresponds with how he's acting, but psychosis isn't some contagious disease. Like, he has it. If he can give it to you, it's because of the media you're listening to. It's because you're not paying attention to facts, you're not paying attention to God, and you're just letting this man lead you astray. A man with no academic value, no moral value. So why is the question you have to ask yourself.